Today, we are demystifying the coaching industry. It seems that everywhere you turn these days, everyone is a coach. So, in today's session, my goal is to put Randall in the hot seat to hear his insider view on the coaching industry from three perspectives. Yes, Randall as business coach, but also as someone surrounded by other coaches in different styles, and as someone who's hired over his career all different kinds of business coaches. So, let's get some clarity on the different approaches and value. For those who are not familiar with Randall, he's a serial entrepreneur. He coaches leaders and boards on business growth. He leads the Brain Trust Professional Institute with me. He has advised over 100 organizations, written 8 books, and is in the Speaker Hall of Fame for business speaking. So, Randall, what are the biggest misconceptions about coaching? And what do leaders need to know to get real value from their business coaches?
Misconceptions about coaching, I think that the biggest issue there is what the heck is a coach? Because there's a whole bunch of different types of coaches. And if you're looking for coach type A and you're thinking about hiring, well, you're presented with coaching type B or C, it's not going to work. You're not going to get what you're going to get out of it. It'll be an unfulfilling experience, and it'll cost a lot of money along the way, right? So I think maybe what we should do is kind of define different types of coaching. And once people understand that, then you can say, okay, for me, at this particular point of my organization's life, of my particular professional growth, I need this kind of coach versus this versus this. There's nothing wrong with each of these types of coaches. They're just different types of coaching for different purposes. There may be a whole bunch of others, but I think this is the easy framework for me. Probably the most standard type of coach that you might run into is one who's actually formally trained. They'll probably have some ICF, International Coaching Federation, credentials. They've done this for a number of people. They subscribe to a number of ethics, and the standard methodology. And I know I'm simplifying these so if anyone's excuse me, a coach listening to this, my apologies for that. It's very effective for what it is. And the idea here is that the coach can bring out and surface some of the stuff that you actually have inside of your knowledge base and your experience already, and help you organize it just by asking particularly good questions. And the questions typically follow a framework. And obviously, the more experienced the coach, the better the questions. But the framework is pretty simple, which is, okay, what's your challenge? Okay, gee, why is that a challenge? Can you give me maybe 3 different ways of addressing that challenge? Well, which one is the best? Why do you think that is? What do you think the first step would be to actually resolving it? You know, if you used that particular solution, gee, do you think you could do that by the next time we meet? Oh, no, is there something preventing you? And that kind of rinse and repeat approach, meeting after meeting, and I am simplifying it, is effectively the way it works. You do not need to be this type of coach to have any domain experience. And that's the power of this kind of coach, because you don't know anything about whatever the particular subject is, or your knowledge base does not have the depth, because your job is to pull out from the particular person and help organize their mind, because they presumably know their business better than you. So that's a traditional business coach. Another type of business coach kind of works on the internals of who you are. Sometimes the word performance coaching comes about. It's a funny kind of name, but the way this type of coaching relationship and ability is very much focused on called the psychological testing. The simple version of this type of coach is, well, we're going to put you through a bunch of tests, Myers-Briggs, colors, DISC. There's a whole bunch of these that are actually pretty good. You get your results, and they sort of say, well, because you think like this, or you've got this type of personality, these are the kinds of things that you should work on. And this is how you interact with other people of the same or different styles or behaviors or mindsets or whatever the tool is actually doing. And the coach, who's an expert in that tool, will help you navigate your particular style in relationship with some of the others. And there's some value to that, because these are very interesting descriptive frameworks that help put a label on particular behaviors, attitudes, perspectives, and everything. And once you understand yourself and you sort of clear out your own internal work, if you will, that'll reduce the obstacles for greater performance. So that's kind of a second. A third type of coach, which is where I probably fit in more than anything else is one where you do bring subject matter expertise to the table. You have been in their shoes before. You have scaled a business to a bigger size. And gee, the challenge is, well, how do I build my business to the next level? Or how do I address some of the complexity or that I might not be as familiar with? And that third type of coaching, I call it growth coaching or business coaching. Sometimes you don't even use the word coach, you use the word advisor. But the idea there is, okay, so what are some of the challenges? Okay, and then you drive through and say, okay, here's a tool that I've used to help do that. Well, what if you looked at it this particular way? Well, when you go to the board, what's the dynamic? And we talk about how that might work, how might when you're dealing with a particularly important hire, what are some of those specific questions? Gee, you've got a problem employee or a high potential one. How do we get the most out of those particular people? How do you address issues of market or channel or finance or exit or structure or operations or supply chain, whatever the particular thing is? Presumably the core, that particular coach has got deep subject matter experience, not just a bunch of letters after their name. Mind you, letters after the name probably is a good indicator that they do have a certain knowledge base to actually help address that. Now, these are all three very different models, and any particular coach probably is more in one of these models than the other. But the question that I would ask, if you're thinking about getting a coach for yourself, is, well, what's the problem that you're looking to solve? Is it that, gee, the business has grown and when it was at a certain size, you kind of knew everything? And now that it's grown to much later, you think that perhaps having somebody from the outside can help short circuit and get you where you need to go faster at a lower risk, whatever it is, by effectively renting their experience and brain? Well, that'd be that business growth coach model. If on the other hand, if you're getting lots and lots of feedback with respect to how you're interacting with other people, excuse me, and a more, I don't want to call it therapeutic, therapist-oriented, assessment-oriented conversation with a skilled professional in that area is what, well, that's where you go. On the other hand, if accountability is a problem, that first model, we're using a more traditional coaching approach. Because if the accountability is the problem, well, that's the route you go, right? But it's just a very, very funny thing. All those questions of how do you as a leader get to the next level, coaching can absolutely help, but you have to make sure that the kind of coaching that you get for you is the kind that will solve the problem that you're actually being faced with. Because otherwise you're going to spend a lot of money. Yes, of course, it'll make a difference no matter what. There's no wrong answer. But on the other hand, what's the primary obstacle here? Is it lack of knowledge and experience, or is it something else?
Look, it makes sense that there's different kinds of coaches because there's different kinds of people, different kinds of needs. I read, according to a 2024 survey, for whatever surveys are worth, that 1 in 6 entrepreneurs today turn to business coaching. And we know that the CEOs of the biggest businesses certainly do use business coaches. So my question to you, 1 in 6, what do you make of that statistic? Do you find that high? Do you find that low? Do you find that different than in previous years?
Well, I don't have previous year's statistics, and this is the first time I've heard of that. I'm heartened by it on one hand. I'm pleasantly surprised by it because 1 in 6. One of the challenges, of being a leader is ego, and not in a positive sense, also in a negative sense. It's a problem because sometimes as a leader you've got all the success, and you start to believe your own propaganda, and everyone around you in a certain sense knows that you're sharp and you're the person who did it and you're the person with the title and everything. And well, guess what? Nothing you can do is wrong. And no leader likes to surround themselves with yes men, yes people, because that's not how you grow a great organization. You've got to surround yourself by great minds who can get things done and work collaboratively and all those kinds of things. And so very often, certainly much earlier in my career, the leaders were kind of by themselves in the sense of, yeah, they had some mentors and everything, but they could do no wrong. And if now 1 in 6 are saying, well, you know something, I don't have all the answers. I can rent the brain cells, I can rent the intelligence, I can rent whatever to help me be much more effective, that's good. On the other hand, 5 out of 6 do not, right? And from that perspective, it's gee, why? Is it because they tried coaching and it was a terrible experience? And there's a whole bunch of reasons why it won't work, which I'm happy to talk about. Or is it because they haven't found one, or that there was no way for them to test drive, if you will? Or is it that ego problem again? Um, or is it just ignorance? They don't know what it is. Or maybe it's cost. It's just cost too much, right? I think that 5 out of 6, what I would say to that is there's incredible potential.
I want to talk about the concept of imposter syndrome. And this term's been more widely used and more widely understood. And where does the imposter syndrome fit into the whole proliferation of the coaching industry? And what would you say to somebody who says that coaches are, or some coaches are preying on people's feelings of insecurities?
Interesting. So the whole question of imposter, I remember the first time I was a senior VP, it was about an American public company. And the management team was fantastic. The direct reports, the next level down, were all sharp. It was just an incredible experience as a leader. And we're doing all these crazy things. And every once in a while, get on an airplane, you're just by yourself, and you think, what the heck am I doing here? I'm just little old me, and we're doing all these crazy things, really. And I felt imposter syndrome, very acutely at that particular time, and I didn't have a confidence problem, although I think sometimes with people who've got imposter syndrome, that may be one of the root causes of it. But I did feel, okay, I did feel, really, will somebody find me out? It's just me, and yet I've got all these things that are happening, right? And all these people doing all these amazing things who work with me. So I don't really know where coaches fit in. For some that are working on kind of that internal kind of thing, for people who do have issues of confidence or of uncertainty or baggage, if you will, from earlier in their career, I think that type of coach might actually help. I don't know if people would say coaches pray. I think that most coaches that I've met over my career, either ones I've hired myself for me, or ones that I've seen work, or other colleagues who are coaches, they care very deeply about what they do. And the last thing the coach really wants is to be taking advantage of or trying to foist themselves on. Most coaches who are doing this seriously, the money problem's been mostly solved, and they're not looking to extrude an extra nickel and dime. That being said, I'm sure that there are some who just like any field, are not as ethical as they could be. But I don't think there's a question of preying on. I really think it's a question of coaches, many coaches, at least the ones I know, truly, truly, truly want to see their clients succeed. Okay, and that's kind of how they pitch themselves. And that's what gives them their jollies when they see their clients go on to do amazing, amazing things. And when that doesn't happen, as a coach, you can fire the client. You don't want to be just taking somebody's money to not have an impact. I think that's true of most business leaders. Why would you be in the job if you can't make an impact?
You talked about different kinds of coaches, and there are coaches with so much depth and maturity and variety of professional experiences and industry knowledge. And certainly their clients are lucky to have them and all that access to that brain cells at their fingertips. But a teacher with knowledge is not the only factor in the learning process. So can you speak to what factors you think are relevant when it comes to how learning happens for adult learners in a coaching relationship?
Um, I think certainly for the kind of coaching I do, where I'm adding very tangible things that go along, tangible knowledge, tools, techniques, templates, whatever it happens to be. Um, I think part of it happens in the magic of the conversation, asking tough questions, suggesting alternatives, poking holes sometimes, praising sometimes. So I think that there's that collaborative conversation that's one part of it. For me, I love to see the light bulb go on and somebody say, well, that means that I could do this or this or this. Most leaders, for that matter, they it's not that they don't have all the answers, it's sometimes they don't have the right questions. So if you ask a simple question, how might we do such and such? Or if you say, what if this? Or I wonder if that. All of a sudden you could see the light bulbs go on, and they can figure out the answer when they've got that right question. But the question about adult learners, right? As some of our listeners, viewers might know, I do a fair amount of training, and so I understand training from that perspective. There's got to be an emotional vector in which that knowledge is transferred and everything. But if I could just sort of take a page from my kind of the coaching that I do is gee, beforehand, what are the issues that you want to talk about during the coaching session? And that's fine. A client will say, here's some of the issues I'm dealing with. Well, guess what? I've got, like, in my case, about over 1,100 resources. So I probably have something already written, or a video or a tool or template, something on it. So it's very easy for me to flip around and say, fantastic, here's a white paper or a video, whatever it is. Read this, watch this. Okay, so that some concepts can be embedded. So when we actually get together, the coaching session doesn't start at ground zero, but I understand what the issue is from their perspective, at least from the initial email they may send, or voicemail they may send. They've got some ideas of some concepts and ideas that can be germinating, etc. We have this amazing conversation, excuse me. We record it. It sits on their portal along with a whole bunch of other resources that we may have loaded up there. And during the month between meetings, they can actually call and say, hey, listen, I've got an obstacle on such and such. What do you think? And that conversation happens, right? So there's like almost a bit of a life cycle that happens on an issue by issue basis. And for me, that's kind of what I've found, the very best way. You can't admin somebody, to death. That won't help them get stuff done, right? Or sit back and take a more strategic view of it. But it certainly helps when you're dealing with it in several different ways. So some email conversations, some resources, the actual coaching sessions, some follow-up stuff, a portal with some more resources, et cetera, et cetera.
For a coaching relationship to succeed, the client certainly has to admire their coach and want to learn from them and be the student. And there are so many dynamic, charming, aspirational coaches that people want to be around and want to be in relationship with. Where do you think the cult of personality plays into the popularity of coaches, of some
Well,
coaches?
well, you know what I said to one client years ago, I'm very excited to work with you, but I'm not your best friend here. We'll build our relationship over time, but my job is to hold you to account with tough questions, or to get you thinking in different ways so that you could address the issues of growth, or addressing complexity, etc., in a particular way. So yes, you have to be motivational in the session that you have with your client in a way that works with them. I've got a bunch of different coaches with very, very different personal styles, all in very different related businesses. Most of my coaching is in service or knowledge-based businesses, growth-oriented startups, whatever it happens to be. But they're all very different. But every single one of them, at the end of the coaching relationship, at the end of the coaching session, needs to say, I've got a bit more energy now. compared to when I went into it. I am motivated a little bit more. Yes, I've got the knowledge based on the session itself, but I'm also keen to get going. I perhaps have a better sense of what my first step is, or how to sort of untie that Gordian knot in a particular way. So yeah, I think aspirational is one thing. The goal of coaches is not to make our clients like us, or to like us, to be like us, or to like us, but it's really more to help them achieve what they're needing to achieve in their particular role, the state and growth of their organization, right? And that's where motivation and knowledge together can actually make a difference. No, motivation, knowledge, and experience, because that certainly is what they're buying, at least for the kind of coaching that I do.
You talked at the top of the hour about different types of coaching, you gave examples. Let's push it further. How would you describe the difference between a coach versus a consultant? And do people come to coaches when what they really need is a consultant?
Oh my, or come to consulting and need a coach. My God, that's such a great question. And the reason why it's such a great question is because the term is used so interchangeably, right? Somebody says, well, I'm a consultant. Okay, well, what do you do? Well, I'm a coach. Well, what do you do? Here's a simple definition that I really like. A consultant is brought in to solve a particular problem. They provide a statement of work where there's a beginning, middle, and end, and there's an outcome at the very end of that. So, for example, you have a problem with inventory in your factory. The consultant comes in and determines the problem is a broken machine, or a bad system or something, and recommends that the machine or the system be replaced or changed or whatever, right? You've got a particular problem with your HR information system. You've grown, you need a little bit better technology to manage your people. Well, the consultant comes in and says, this is the system you should get, and this is kind of what it is, and here's the alternatives, and this is how you implement. That's a consulting project. There's a problem, okay, and the consultant comes in, and there's a beginning, middle, and end, and the very end, the consultant goes away, and hopefully, your team is skilled up to sort of carry on what it is that consulting is doing. They now know how to use that HRIS system. They now know in the factory how to deal with that inventory problem, because the new system is in place, etc. So that's consulting. And for me, I'm a certified management consultant, a fellow. I've got some recognition in that space, and that's a very defined kind of thing. Okay. Coaching, on the other hand, is very different. Coaching is an ongoing relationship where the goal is to fill in the blanks, at least for my kind of coaching, filling in the blanks of the leader's knowledge base and experience base to provide the outsourced brain cells when there's particular issues, so that the organization as a whole can get to that next level. And what you might talk about in any particular coaching session might be very different, or it might be a part one, part two, part three, but it's an ongoing relationship. And there's a beginning that you're always in the middle. And I'll also say this, there's also an end. But the end is very different than that for consultants. Consultants, there's a beginning, middle, and end. The problem has been solved. Okay, but if you're looking to grow an organization, to continually improve your margins and continually improve your client experience, continually improve your impact in whatever it is, there isn't particularly an end there. But there is an end to where that particular coach can actually help. Let me give you an example. So let's just say you hire a coach who's helped businesses and has got experience themselves in growing a business from 0 to 1 million. Well, let's just say you're at 0 and that consultant helps you along to $1 million. Well, that consultant may be clever, they might be smart, but do they have the experience and knowledge to get you from 1 million to 2 million? Okay, let's do something a little bit more realistic. You're at $5 or $10 million business, and you're looking to double that. Okay, and the consultant that you've got has got some experience doing that. Well, thank you very much. Once you get to that, say 20 million, is that coach's experience used up? Okay, or is there still a little bit more that they can help you with? At a certain point, the coach's knowledge base ends. right? And you probably should get a different coach, right? In my particular case, I'm I've sat on corporate boards. I've sort of done the whole spectrum. Okay, but at a certain point, I will say to a client, I think our time is nearing the end, and here's why. And the client may say, well, no, 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 I still want you because of such and such. But that conversation actually happens at a certain point in time, or it should happen at a certain point in time, for every coach-client relationship, right? You've got to deliver value, and as a coach, you have to receive that value as a client. If there's no change, then there's a bit of a challenge. So that's the significant difference between a coach and a consultant. Now, let me throw another term in the mix. Advisor. What the heck's an advisor? Well, an advisor could be a consultant or they could be a coach. And it's very interesting because some of my clients will say, well, Randall, you're my business coach. And that's fine. So I say, not a problem. I'm your business coach. Some other clients don't like the term coach. They say, well, you're my advisor. I don't like coach. So I said, well, why? I don't have a problem. I like the term advisor. Well, there's a lot of coaches who are life coaches or fitness coaches or some other type of coach which may have value in those particular areas, but I see what you're doing as something quite different. So I prefer just to use the word advisor. It's got more cachet. Not a problem. I'm an advisor, right? So it really depends. So when somebody positions themselves or you're considering getting some of the help, it's best to sort of ask more of these questions to understand, well, what the heck is somebody actually providing? Because if you just say, this is what I need, it's too easy, I think, sometimes for service providers, I'll use that term, to say, well, I do that. Okay, how many people have you done it for? How many years have you been doing it for? What kind of certifications do you have? Well, have you actually done this yourself? Well, at what scale have you done it yourself? There's a whole bunch of these due diligence questions. So if you get them to ask, if you're able to ask, well, tell me what you do, okay, it gives you a better sense as to, well, are they a coach that does a pure accountability? In which case, absolutely, they should have credentials from places like the ICF. Are they ones who work on these psychological testing and various assessments, colors, Myers-Briggs, etc. In which case, they should be certified in that. Okay, or they focus more on growth coaching and helping in that area. In which case, you can look at their credentials as well. Okay, so it really depends, but you should be asking what they do before you say, this is what I need. That way you'll get the unvarnished what they do, and you'll understand, because it may very well be that you need precisely what they want, but ask first, and then you can share.
We've worked with clients, leaders that use more than one coach, different types of coaching, right? And at the other end, we regularly meet leaders who say they already have a coach, that box is checked, therefore they don't need another one. They don't need our services at this time. What is your take on using multiple coaches simultaneously? Is this advisable? Are there synergies to be had? What do you think of that?
Some people, we started this conversation by saying, how does growth happen? Yeah, they can read, they can take courses, they can, if there's a board, their employees, etc. So you learn from all kinds of different places. And so for some leaders, they'll say, well, I really want to work with this coach for this and this coach for that. Okay, because that's the most efficient way for them to actually skill up and themselves and build the business. So for example, some people are looking to implement a management system, EOS, entrepreneurial operating system. There's a whole bunch of different ones. And they want a coach who's certified in that to help implement the system over a couple of years. So fine, have that coach. On the other hand, there's other coaches like me or others that do other kinds of things. There's no conflict as long as everybody understands what lane they're in. And it's the client to be able to say, this is where I need help from you. coach number one, and this is where I need help from you, coach number two. I think that as one's relationship with the coach deepens, they learn more and more and more about the business. Okay, sometimes it's hard for people to let go and say, I think our time is done. And I think that in that particular case, just adding more and more coaches, on one hand is an easy way to sort of not say goodbye to the coach who's helped you get to where you are, but maybe their time is up. Okay, but what I would say is this: if you try a new coach, and all of a sudden it's like, boy, this is a breath of fresh air. This is some different ways of thinking of things that will help move me in the business to that next level. Okay, at that point you might realize that the coach number one, their time is done, right? And you just change the basis of how you work with them. Maybe it's not every month, maybe it's every quarter, or maybe an annual check-in or something, or maybe not at all, right? You've grown out of them. I do think that there's value in having multiple coaches for those people who may not have the other support structures that are around them, or where there's some very specific things and specific coaches. So I do a lot of spinning. My spinning coach, and there's a few of them that I use, are truly gifted people. But I wouldn't ask them to help me with nutrition. I wouldn't help them, and certainly not about business, right? That's not their expertise. Yet I've got a couple different people that are coaching me, right? So I think that's a perspective that I think can help a little bit.
We worked with companies as clients where each of the senior managers in that company are being coached, okay? And sometimes you have a few of them being coached by the same people or different people. So of course, there's different folks, different needs, different personality fit. Would you think it's advisable for there to be that diversity of coaching and different inputs, or is it advisable to have the same coach because there'd be confusing messages? Could you speak to that? Like, what strategy would you take?
So I've been in both kind of situations. I like the idea, as long as there's the capacity of the coach to handle it, to actually have the same coach for several of the leadership team. And the reason why is because if the common purpose is how do we grow this business, okay, what you learn as a coach from one client, from one direct C-level leader, you can also use in the other, because there's no secrets, right? And it's while everything's confidential, it's confidential with respect to the business as a whole. Excuse me. And so if you're an experienced coach, you can handle multiple, and it's best for the company, best for the client. I will say though that there are times where you've got to be careful. I coach in a number of businesses where I've got several partners or several C-level people in the same business, and some of the conversations specifically with the people dimension of it, okay, are confidential to a particular coaching relationship. And so as long as everyone understands that when they're talking to you about certain things, they're really confidential just to the two of you. When you're talking about other things, it's not confidential to people who are under that dome of confidentiality. But it's a challenging situation that only a mature coach can really manage. Now, that being said, when the goal is not, for example, business growth, but it's purely just the growth of the individual, sometimes it's better to actually have separate coaches. And the reason why that is because sometimes a coach can say, are you sure this role is best for you? In which case, the client isn't really the company. The client is the individual who's actually there. And therefore the advice that's given is given in that context rather than for the overall company's benefit. I'll also say sometimes individual leaders need different things. So for example, let's just say I'm coaching the CEO, the managing partner, whatever the role is, right? And then there's somebody else who's not that senior, but is a high potential, and they need some specialist coaching in a particular area. We've got one client where that's the particular case where there's two coaches from us who have got different skills and are providing a different perspective. right? And so in that particular case, two coaches is not a bad thing. In fact, that's absolutely the only way that you can go, right? So it depends on the situation, and there's strong arguments for it. There's some challenges that need to be addressed as well. I think one of the more interesting things, particularly, is the question of the internal conversations at the coaching organization and the support back and forth with respect to, gee, I'm coaching so-and-so, here's some of the issues, coaching colleague, what do you think? And so if one coach is able to provide some mentorship, some perspective to the other coach with respect to the client, there's some value to that as well, right? So it's a good question. I just wish more organizations understood the incredible power of having several of their people coached by the same organization, because that way the knowledge and the context can be shared, and it's actually quite synergistic.
I like how you said here, you know, I wish people understood the power of it. And we see this all the time, the power of the coaching and how things really accelerate much faster than the client even thought would be possible. We meet leaders and we meet HR directors who totally get the value of coaching. They're ready to sign us up. And then we speak to people who are like, you know, coaching is, they don't have a good opinion of it, right? So how do you wrap your mind around this dichotomy, right? It's like, it's not just they say, I don't need this now, or different strokes, different folks. They really have, I don't know if the word disdain is too strong, but is it like a nature of a person, or they had bad experiences? Like, why such a spectrum?
So boy, we don't have 6 hours to talk that one, but let me describe it this way. Sometimes people and leaders or decision makers don't have a good coaching experience for a million different reasons, and therefore we're not going down that path. Some corporate cultures are filled with machismo, and are, you know, we're going to do it, and coaching isn't looked at as a sign of strength, but actually a sign of weakness. You need help? Well, we hired you. We're paying you a lot of money. Surely you can do it. If you can't do it, we'll swap you out, right? And so that's, you know, that might be part of the reasons. Sometimes it might be ignorance, not in a negative sense, but they just haven't experienced it. They don't know the power of it. Sometimes they can't find ones that are you know, quality, call it that. Sometimes they're getting the wrong type of coach. They're getting, you know, style 1 when they need style 3, right? Or vice versa, right? So there's a whole bunch of reasons why I think sometimes it's a question of cost, right? You know, and that's that for the smallest of businesses, that's usually a barrier, and therefore the kind of coach they might be able to afford might not be the kind that can actually move the needle for them, right? There's a whole bunch of different reasons why. I think that if you're in the middle, though, there's one quick way to sort of help prove to yourself whether in fact it can work or it can't work. If you're thinking of setting up coaching for your high potential employees or for your senior leaders, or if you yourself are thinking of doing it, ask for a test drive. You know, could you do one session, you know, pro bono, you know, most coaches, every business needs to find a way to let people to, you know, taste the chocolate before they buy the box of it. And so if you're able to do a 1 hour coaching session with the specific prospective coach you're thinking about, you'll have a pretty good sense as to whether there's a connection, number one, and whether the value that they add is the value that you're looking for, and whether their process and methodology is what you're looking for as well. And if you're able to do the test drive, if you're in that middle group, this might be the way for you to say, yeah, okay, I see the power of coaching, but this person is not the right one. Or, boy, I see the power of coaching, and what this person is doing would be excellent for person X or Y or Z. Okay, so there's the test drive concept is very, very important. Can I add one other thing as well? Maybe I misspoke. At the very beginning, I talked about 3 categories of coaches. There's a 4th, and this is what I call the formula follower. Because if you're a coach, what if you have a very specific methodology? You know, we've got one too, okay? A very specific methodology, and you need to go through the following 8 steps, 6 steps in order to actually graduate at the end of it. In a certain sense, this is kind of a hybrid between training and coaching, because you're following almost a defined curriculum, etc., except for it's in a coaching context. We can do that, and we can do the more impactful free form, dealing with the particular issues of a particular client. But sometimes, particularly at the lower price points, it might be join our coaching program. And when you join our coaching program, you will go through these 6 modules or go through these whatever, and that's all we do. In which case, it's less coaching as opposed to get on our particular escalator and just tick the boxes along the way and come out the other end, off you go, right? And maybe there's a continuity program. So there's coaching to that. We're working on it too. We've got it. If you're interested, we could talk about it. But it's less pure coaching as opposed to helping you go through a defined process.
Randall, 3 types of coaches, 4. I'm sure there's more. And there's another one we can talk about. What are your thoughts on group coaching? On that note, we're going to put a pin in this part 1 of our talks about the coaching industry. We're going to pick up next week to talk more about the good and bad reasons why people discontinue their coaching, understanding coaching fees, group coaching, industry regulations, and much more. See you then.